This presentation is going to be videoed. I'm going to record this because this is the only session that we have our expert flying in for this. Minimizing risk for our students and ourselves when we travel with students. Yes?
I hate the sound of my voice on a microphone. So as we said, we have come to you guys today because we want to help prepare you for the school year, really, right? We, of course, are always a little worried about ICDC when it's in Nashville. It's not my first DECA rodeo, so I could tell you all about my first DECA rodeo. But, so just so you guys know a little bit about us, so we are an insurance agency, but we also do risk management training, all sorts of things like that. We work with schools, we work with nonprofits, we of course work with the CTSOs, including DECA, but we do work with all of the CTSOs and all programs and studies in about 40 states. We insure about 40 states. We work with all the CTSOs in all 50 states, excuse me. And we've been doing that for about 10 years now. Hold on one second. Larry is my clicker today. Let's all give him a round of applause for that. Good job. Yeah. We all have a role to play, so you can click. So my name is Amanda Rubianis. I do expect you guys to be able to spell Rubianis at the end of this. No, I'm just kidding. But like I said, I've been doing this for about 10 years. In addition to being a licensed insurance agent, I'm a certified school risk manager. I know it's super exciting. But what it means is that we understand what you guys are doing in the classroom and outside of the classroom, which for the DECA advisors, a lot of the big things we concern about are outside of the classroom. We also do abuse prevention training and certifications as well. And I serve on several advisory boards for organizations that I work with in my hometown of Tucson, well, my adopted hometown of Tucson, so click, click. Okay, so as I mentioned, I do not like the sound of my voice on a microphone, so I'm going to ask for some participation. I know you guys have already been here all day, but we're going to try to kind of see what everybody's thinking about right now. So what are your roles as a DECA chapter advisor? Don't make me call on somebody. You, sir, in the plaid shirt. It's all right.
Organizer.
Organizer? Someone over there? Planning. Okay. Cheerleader? I like it. Okay. Anybody else? Mom. So I was actually waiting for somebody to say that because that is the word that actually gets used at every single training that we do. Every time we ask that question, it's parent. So, anybody else? I saw a hand raised. Too late.
Okay. We wipe noses.
Yeah, essentially, right? A lot of hand holding, a lot of calming them down where they're freaked out about competition, organizing, planning, logistics, keeping track of everybody, making sure that everybody's got their blazer, the two young ladies that greeted me, in their DECA finest. So all of those things, right? I was hoping that someone would guess, since I'm doing a training on risk management, risk manager, safety, keeping kids out of trouble. With you guys headed to ICDC in Nashville, I'll tell you a little story about my first DECA rodeo. So we were downtown, checking the sites out, and I was talking to somebody, and I said, don't you worry about the kids coming to a place like Nashville. There's so many bars here. He said, oh no, they bring enough of their own alcohol. And I thought to myself, does he know who I am? And wow, okay, that's why we're here, right? So, all kidding aside though, we do want you guys to be focusing on the safety of things and the safety of kids, and we don't ever want to tell anybody, no, don't do that. Sometimes we do, but we don't want to. What we want to do is for you guys to find a way to do your job safely, to keep the kids safe, to then protect the organization, protect yourself, make sure that everybody stays out of trouble, right? So we're going to promote that kind of from the top down, right? So your Missouri state staff, they do a great job. So they've hired me. No, just kidding. But they are actually concerned about keeping the organization protected and making sure everybody gets to do the fun things with the kids, right? Okay, so this is not a shameless plug for how cute my kids are, but they are super cute. My point with this is that I'm sure you guys are like, oh, this is what she does all day. She talks about safety and she's a risk manager. It's easy for her to say this, right? So I'm going to tell you a little story. So a few years ago, we were at that very beach, but my children were about 3 years younger. So my oldest, Lorelai, she gets lost, right? Coming between my husband and I on a very crowded beach. He's like, oh, where's Lorelai? I'm like, she's with you. And then the panic sets in, right? I literally had just given a presentation on crisis management the day before. What do? Panic. I panic. Immediately I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna be on the news tonight. We have no idea where she is. We start screaming. Somebody comes up to us and says, did you ask a lifeguard? I was like, oh my God, a lifeguard. So, needless to say, all's well that ends well. We found her about 15 minutes later with the lifeguard. But it taught me a really good lesson that I want you guys to take with you today, is that it's all about being prepared, right? Now, flash forward about 2 years later, somebody else loses their kid at the same exact beach. Why people keep going to this beach, I don't know. And I said, did you talk to a lifeguard? It's gonna be okay. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, so the point isn't lose your kids and then you'll be able to find somebody else's kids. Is that we just need to prepare for this, right? We need to prepare for these situations that inevitably come up. So with that in mind, click. Preparation is the key to prevention. I've got all sorts of these risk management sayings, but this is the one we're going to focus on today. So we've broken you guys into groups. I'm going to come around and I'm going to give you a situation. The thing I want you to keep in mind about these situations, they're all real. I don't have to make stuff up. I cut stuff out, honestly, when I'm trying to think about what are we going to talk about today? What are like the most recent things we've seen with the other DECAs or other organizations or schools. These are all real things that happen to the organizations that we work with. And the best way to prevent them from happening again is to prepare you guys so that you know what to do, right? Because you won't necessarily be judged on a kid wandering off at the beach, but you will be judged if you can't fix it. And that's what will come to hurt yourselves and the students and the organization and won't allow you to keep, going to downtown Nashville and all that. So I'm going to take a little break from talking. We're going to come around and give you guys some situations. We want you to focus on a few things. Look, Larry, he's not doing very good a job. So we want you to focus on, could this be prevented? If not, what can you do to fix it? If it could be prevented, what could you have done to implement that? And some good practices for follow-up and follow-through. So we're going to break out into those little groups. You guys have notebooks to write on. We'll come give those to you. Okay, is everybody ready? I wish I had a teacher voice right now. Okay, so everybody got their situation. And I do want to reiterate, because I think a few people were looking at me like I was making this stuff up. I cannot make this stuff up. I really can't. I wish that it could. I wish that I came to trainings with like a puppy, so it would be like happier for people. We've been telling you these situations and having you think about them and having you work through them. Our goal is not to scare you or make you not want to be a DECA advisor or help these kids or anything like that. Our goal is to help you understand that these situations happen and we should always have a little bit of concern, right? Someone once told me that the only people that don't worry are psychopaths. I don't know if that's true, But I can see how that's the case. So we want to give you the tools to just stop that worry and to not be scared. So we're going to talk through these. So who had situation 1? There's a couple tables. All right. So Larry abandoned me. And he's clicking.
Would you like a clicker?
Yeah, it's all right. Okay, so just so in case anybody didn't read it, so while at officer leadership camp, a student officer discloses she was recently raped. It did not happen at that conference, nor was one of the members or volunteers part of it. She is only 16 and has mentioned it was an older boy who did it. She is obviously shaken and looking for help. So, is there any way for this to be prevented? No. So that's the big thing with this. Obviously, it wasn't part of the organization, and it's really going to be about follow-up and intervention. So what did you guys talk about?
Mandatory reporting, we have to report it immediately.
Yes. So I'm so glad to hear that. Did everybody hear that? So mandatory reporting. Do we all know what that is? Yes. Do you guys? Okay. So for those of you who didn't raise your hands, mandatory reporting just means that anybody who is essentially in contact with a minor and becomes aware that they are being hurt in some way. This could be rape, this could be child abuse, it's a whole host of different things. You are a mandatory reporter, and if you do not report that to the proper authorities, you can go to jail too. So I just always like to think of Penn State. I know it's an extreme example, but just keep in mind kind of the ripple effect of not reporting it. So what other thoughts did you guys have?
Are you ready for us? Okay.
What's that?
All right. We're situation 1. Good afternoon, fellow DECA advisors, and Happy New Year. I bring you greetings from Riverview Garden High School, representing this group. Far as the intervention, one of the things we kind of said, which I kind of agree with you all over here too, but because that person confided in one of the DECA advisors, we felt that it was our duty to gather as much information as possible. We want to make sure that we have the student to write down, or the DECA member to write down.
I'm actually going to stop you for a second.
Okay.
And I totally understand why you guys think this, and because you're teachers and because of what you do, I think your natural instinct is to help these kids. I want you to keep 2 things in mind. One, in this particular situation, it ended up being her dad, which is...
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay.
No, because then we're not going to get it on that.
Because this is buzzing.
Okay. So it was her dad, that you guys would know that. This is actually one of the reasons I used this situation is because it was something that happened very early on when we started working with the CTSOs, and it's just always really affected me. So it just always stands out. The other thing is, again, it's your natural tendency to want to help them, but you are not an investigator. We don't want to ask them leading questions. We don't want to really do anything out of our scope. We just want to say, hey, we are going to get you some help, and then you're going to turn that over to the authorities, because that's their job, right? To investigate it and to figure out what's going on, and to get them in contact with the people who can facilitate that help. There's only so much you guys can do in your role, and you don't kind of want to go down that rabbit hole of questioning. So I'm sorry.
So we kind of went on a little bit further because we kind of was on that same line. We would alert the administration because the student is still in our care at this point. And what we don't want to see happen is that whoever she or he is rooming with, that they end up having any type of problem that will impact the other people that they're rooming with. And, but the reality of it is we're really unable to do anything other than get in touch with the administration at this point.
Yeah, so in this particular situation where it is an event off campus, while you're there as a representative of your school, you're also a representative of the organization. So not only do you want to communicate with your either principal or school board or however that works at your particular school district, but you also want to have that conversation with your state advisor. because once it happens on a DECA-sanctioned event, it just could pull DECA into that responsibility. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind too is that when these kids are sharing these things, and this literally happened in like a circle, like a kumbaya circle of leadership training, and that's when these things tend to come out. So it is going to affect their fellow leaders in the organization, and making sure just that anybody who needs help gets that appropriate help. Do you guys have any questions about this situation? No? Okay, let's move on. Okay. So, second situation, I think unfortunately happens more and more nowadays, but this is pretty recent as well. So, during campaigning for state officer, Sarah, as we've named her, tries to get her fellow candidates to bully one of the other candidates. She devises a whole plan to start rumors and sabotage his schedule, so he will be nervous and unable to do well during his speech. Her fellow candidates report her behaviors to their advisors. Their advisor accuses Sarah of bullying and lying when she denies it. Sarah reports this to her parents, and by the end of the day, the advisors have received emails threatening them with a lawsuit. So who had this situation? Do you guys want to kind of talk about prevention, intervention, follow-up?
Yes. We talked about having contracts for behavior for kids, but as Sarah pointed out, that's not going to hold up in court.
Oh, wait, real Sarah or like pretend Sarah?
Real Sarah.
Oh, okay.
We've got Sarah there. But the other conversation was that it doesn't sound like they gave Sarah due process, and they just automatically assumed that that's what happened. That's what stuck up to me. So.
Which is a super good point, because you have to be careful. Like, I know we all get scared of bullying and all of these things that come up, and when people come to you and say, oh, so-and-so is doing this, we automatically kind of think they're telling the truth, which is awesome, and we should, kind of have that faith. But that's not always true, and innocent until proven guilty. So we have to give everyone their chance to talk, not just kind of the accusers, but also the accused. And so, do you guys have thoughts on prevention for bullying?
I think it's a tone you set with your kids and an expectation that you set from the start.
I think maybe after the situation, when it was brought to the advisors, they were aware of it, that maybe have a broad conversation with your whole group, not just pinpointing one person to say, it's come to my attention that someone is, instead of one person, so that Sarah would know that the advisor is aware of something going on, but you can't really discipline that when it's hearsay,
Those are both so awesome. Thank you guys. Because it's true. It really is a tone that's set. We don't want to kind of participate in the gossip and the sharing about students and all that kind of stuff, because that tone just falls through to them. And we want to set expectations for behavior, and they are going to learn by what they see. We can tell them all sorts of things, but if we don't kind of participate in that ourselves, they're not going to do it. And then also kind of just setting a general conversation of, hey, we've heard some things. We're not saying anybody did it, but that's not how things work at DECA, right? And making sure that everybody's just kind of aware that you're watching. The more kids, or anyone really, knows that you're just aware of the behaviors, the less likely they are to continue with it. There's also some pretty cool apps out there now, like Safe to Tell and Stop It. Does anybody use Stop It at their school? No? So it actually is a way for people to kind of send you anonymously things from Snapchat and Twitter and whatever else kids use these days. Nothing makes me feel older than social media. But they could send you a screenshot, but you wouldn't know necessarily who it came from unless they chose to tell you, which as a kid, they may not necessarily want to tell on somebody, and this kind of gives them an avenue to do it. But I would check that app out. It's just a really, really great tool for you guys. And then involving your state advisor, as needed, but also the parents as needed. Again, keeping away from that accusatory tone, right? Hey, we've had some situations arise at DECA. We just want to make sure that everyone is going into the school year with expectations of, a safe, happy, cooperative community. Any questions on that? Thoughts, concerns? Okay, who has situation number 3? This literally just happened last week. So it was it's a good one. Yes? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to read it for everybody. So after participating in a regional competition, a local chapter arrives back at their school. Most of the parents are there to pick up their kids, but 2 are left waiting. The chapter advisor orders an Uber for them and heads home. The Uber will not take them because they are both minors and they're left there waiting for their parents. All right. You guys want to go first? Know what the policy is at your school or within the state about transporting students? Yay, nay, no. So we should definitely all know what that is, because this is going to happen more often than you might think, where you'd be left with kids, or maybe you have officers from your chapter who need to get to stuff, or you're going back and forth. Do you know what your school's policy is on public transportation? Such as Ubers or taxis?
No, I don't think so. The taxis, yes.
Okay. So we're waiting for 100% confirmation from actual Uber on this, but to the best of our knowledge, Ubers do not take minors, and there is a portion in the never-ending legal information that you're supposed to read that does say that unaccompanied minors are not supposed to be in an Uber. So I just want to get that out there because it is one of the questions we've had the most lately. Schools and states are cracking down on you guys being in cars with the students, but in my opinion, it's even worse to send them in a car with a stranger. I know that's how I got here today, but just keep that in mind and never leaving them unchaperoned or unaccompanied. We always tell people you should never find yourself in a one-on-one situation with a student unless it's this. Because the one thing worse than being one-on-one with them is them being alone, which is awesome. And I know, so I live in Tucson, Arizona, and the Little League there, they have an app now where you can actually log in and watch your kid play if you can't be there, and it will tell you they're on first or whatever is going on. But it also sends out notifications like practice was canceled or the game got called for excessive heat in Tucson. And so those options, I don't know what your schools have, but those kind of things are really awesome tools that they're there for the guilty parents who can't be at something, but they're also really awesome tools to kind of prevent all these situations from happening. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, so situation number 4. We got this. Okay. So while at fall leadership, a student has a seizure. In the midst of the seizure, she falls and hits the side of her head. The student is epileptic and has medication, but was running late for her session that morning and didn't take it, nor did her advisor remind her to take it. After the seizure is over, the student seems fine and does not want to go to the hospital, but has a bruise on the side of her head. I see a lot of people shaking their heads, so that's sad, because I feel like that means that you guys have had this happen. So, anybody? Prevention?
We just said to have a proper plan for taking and managing meds for all your students that you're traveling with.
So does everybody have their students fill out a medical form, a medical release form, if they have a medication or anything like that? Of course there's HIPAA, privacy, concerns, but Where do you keep those forms so that you know what protocol would be if something happened? To keep it on your body? Yeah, good. Okay. So you guys are like really on top of things. You should be happy. Yeah.
So the form is just where they just sign and they put their medical card on there in the event that we're at a conference and they get sick and they're away. But then I haven't seen, and maybe you guys can tell me, I don't see a separate form other than what we may have on file at the school that the parents have to fill out every year if a kid is on a special kind of medication. Like, so for example, if I'm traveling with a kid and all of a sudden they get a sinus headache, I mean, it's not something that occur all the time, but it may just happen to occur on the trip.
Sure, and there's a difference between something like that, right? Like we get headaches, we get colds, like things come up. But our concern is knowing a proper protocol when acting on an ongoing, perhaps chronic medical condition. The seizure one, it happened in Arizona. The state advisor called me. I was like, why are you calling me? You need to call 911. Yeah, but so I was like, call me back later. But having those forms, and we can help with that, where it just kind of includes that information. So do you have an ongoing medical concern? Are there medications that you travel with? Because you need to be aware of those things. One of the biggest things that we see, honestly, is failure to act properly in a medical situation. And honestly, when in doubt, just call 911. Again, you guys aren't police, you're not doctors. There's a lot of different things that can go into like seizure protocol, for example. But when in doubt, just call 911, have them evaluated, and that way it's off your shoulders. I know that sounds terrible, but sometimes it is about passing that responsibility off and pass it off to an EMT or pass it off to a doctor. And let them make that decision, not a teenager who's just trying to save face and is worried about missing their competition. Because I know things get really, really intense for these kids, and everything is at the end of the world, and they don't want to get docked points and all of that. But we have to make sure that we're being concerned with this sort of thing. Okay, so I feel like you guys have probably heard this story like 100 times, but. So while at fall leadership, 2 girls sneak out of their room to go party after curfew with some students from another chapter. In the morning, the girls told their chapter advisor that they were sexually assaulted by 2 of the boys in the room. The girls' chapter advisor tells the chapter advisor from the boys' school, who says the boys are good kids and they've never been in trouble. She's sure it isn't true. The girls are only 15, and this is their first time away on a school-sanctioned trip. So who had this story? Okay. Do you guys want to talk about prevention, perhaps? I think this one is particularly important with travels to national.
One of the things for prevention we talked about is there's all the policies and the guidelines and the things they're supposed to sign before they go. So we talked about going over that with them, even though they admitted they snuck out. But I think maybe that's some kind of protection for us because they knew the rules.
It is, and that kind of again goes to our first priority is always actual safety, but we also want to think about we're going to do what we can do to kind of pass that responsibility off.
Discuss it with the students before they go, and maybe the parents too, probably.
Yeah. Do you guys do luggage checks?
Yes.
I did hear a story about a kid who had a handle of vodka shipped to him, though, at a national conference. I was like, I got nothing for you. I don't know. Except for that, if your kids are getting like giant boxes in the mail at conferences, check them, shake them. I don't know. But doing luggage checks, honestly, because they will bring stuff with them, and the kids are going to do something, they're going to do it, and they're going to find a way to do it. So, nipping that in the bud, so to speak. Do we do curfew checks?
Say one thing, even when the word gets out that you're doing luggage check, that's what I did when I was DECA advisor, and they roll their luggage near the van to get on,
that again goes back to just knowing somebody's paying attention is sometimes enough to stop a vast majority of the behavior, honestly.
I didn't put my hand in their luggage, so I'm trying to save people. I did not enter their personal space.
You don't need to bring a dog to sniff it out or anything like that. I know sometimes it's hard for like male teachers to go through the girls' luggage, that kind of stuff. If it's possible to find another chapter advisor to buddy up with, or just somebody from your school that could help you out before you head out with the students, you know, in the realm of making things not awkward for everybody. But again, making sure that they know you guys are paying attention. So do we do curfew checks? Yeah. Okay. You guys are like, yes. Okay. So anything else on that situation? This again goes back to mandatory reporting. Is that up for you guys to investigate? I can tell you that was really one of the worst claims we've ever had and one of the worst issues we've ever seen. And it was on peoplemagazine.com. It was on the front page of the local newspaper. It was really awful. And there was a lot of things that could have been done to prevent it. So just keeping those in mind. But again, calling 911 when that happens is not up for you guys to investigate. It doesn't matter what you think of the boys or the girls or anything. And even if it hasn't escalated to this point, do we know what we do when we find out the kids are out after curfew or that they've broken another rule? Do we call their parents and send them home? Yeah, okay. And consistency. Whatever you do to one kid, you have to do it to the other. Doesn't matter if you think the other one's a better kid or it's your kid or whatever the case may be. You have to be consistent and you have to follow the written policies. That is the number one thing. Whatever we have in writing, whatever we have in our code of conduct, that's what we're enforcing. Okay, so I think you guys had this over here, right? Yeah. So we use this example not to be just really sad or anything like that, but we use it because it's true. This is the worst phone call I've ever had, really ever in my whole life. And so while at state leadership, a chapter advisor decides to skip opening session and takes her students to the beach. Despite rough water warnings, several of the students go swimming, and almost immediately a student is swept away by the current and goes missing. His body is found several days later. His advisor was unaware that he was not a good swimmer, nor did she know that her school district policy was no swimming at off-campus events. So what can we do to prevent this?
Well, our first thing was don't skip the opening session.
Don't skip any sessions. How about that? A busy kid is a kid that stays out of trouble. It doesn't matter if you want to go to the beach or if you think that's more fun than the keynote or anything like that. Your job is to keep those kids in line and doing what they're there to do.
So I guess this is part of the prevention, to meet as a district, and then you have your spokesperson who goes to the state advisor to say all chapters from our district are here and all their kids are accounted for.
Roll call, yeah.
And then report if anybody's missing, and then the response, obviously call 911 and call the authorities and your administrators and parents and your direct advisor, all of that.
And making sure the other kids are safe as possible, and that they're kind of have someone with them so that you can kind of facilitate them kind of dealing with that as it's happened. So the first call really is 911, but the second one would be your state advisor, and then kind of letting them dissipate that information as far as parents, school district, etc. The other thing that we've done that we've provided is a permission slip that just has a really simple section in it that my student is allowed to swim, yes or no. It's on our website too. And we do this because we know for certain that boy would not have told his friends he wasn't a good swimmer. What teenage boy or girl, for that matter, is going to admit in front of their friends that they can't do something? It's not going to happen. And by saying, hey, my parents won't let me do this, you're kind of passing the blame. Just like I tell my clients all the time, just say I said they couldn't do it. I don't care. I'll be the bad guy. But it's the same thing. So, but really, we really, really, really can't say it enough. Don't take the kids swimming in like bodies of water. There's just too many things that could happen, so many uncontrollables. But first and foremost, at least using that permission slip and making sure that we're looking at it. I've definitely had advisors say, I didn't realize the parents checked no because I didn't really read it. I just thought it when it came back that meant that they could go, which I get it. But it's really, I can't stress how important it is to make sure that you're on the same page as the parents and your school and everything else. So again, we don't like to kind of end on that note, but we really just hope that you guys take something away from the training that we do today, and that it will kind of stay in your mind, right? When you're acting as a DECA advisor or coach, hopefully, or any other roles that you might have. So, do you guys have any questions, thoughts, concerns, suggestions, jokes?
Don't ask them for
Like that could go bad.
Just real quick about Nashville, I wouldn't let him into Cumberland River. It's very polluted.
Would anyone even want to go in there?
Our hotel has a swimming pool indoors, and I think Cindy will tell you about that later. Scooters. There's scooters everywhere. And
scooters, just talking about scooters that are around there, I think that we as a state probably need to tell our kids to stay off them. Probably all of them are very coordinated to be able to do it, but it only takes one to fall off.
Is that a no from the boss here?
So I do believe that when they sign in or use a credit card or whatever to use the scooters, the app asks if they're 18. If they're not actually allowed to use them. So no, because most of your kids are going to be under 18, and the ones that are 18 should just not do it anyway. But just tell them the scooter company, it's just not allowed. It's just part of their regulations. So.
And then there is some, I guess on Broadway, there's a couple bars down there, like a ton. Been there. I was looking for you, but I didn't see. But those are the things that during the day they let students into the bars to eat and all that kind of stuff. And once it hits like 8:30, 9 o'clock, they shut the bars down to high school students and anything like that, or they have to be accompanied by an adult. But that's one thing that we need to, just have the conversation that you don't want them in there. And that's going to keep them safe. And I think that this whole thing with the safe, it's our responsibility to keep them safe when we're on those trips. And Nashville is going to be a challenge. And back to the scooter deals, there's hills everywhere, all right? And they going down those hills, they're going to be going about 40 or 50 miles an hour. If they get it, just tell them they cannot get on those. And it just takes one bump and they're gone. And it's not a very good deal. There's a lot of homeless people in Nashville in different various parts of the park, and one of them that's by our hotel, we'll walk by every time we go down to the convention center and just have that conversation. Tell them that there's going to be people there. If they just don't talk to them and they just keep walking, they usually don't bother you at all. But they're all going to be asking for food and money, and some of the kids will say, oh, I feel sorry for them. Have the conversation before you go, because there's a lot down there. A lot more than I saw last time that we went there to Nashville. So that's something you have to be concerned about too.
So I want to say two things. So obviously we're concerned about ICDC and the things that could happen in Nashville, but again, they bring their own alcohol, so it's fine. But the thing that really to keep in mind as you go through the school year, kind of leading up to ICDC, is that the behaviors that you expect from them at chapter events, and then district events, and state events, that is what they're going to get used to, and that is the behavior that they're going to understand is what is expected of them when they get to Nashville. So, and to, always keep them kind of on that path, right? They're there to learn to be leaders and entrepreneurs, and somebody from Collegiate DECA actually said that they're just trying to replicate spring break. I said, well, we're not actually trying to do that. So they can have spring break and vacation, and you guys can have vacation on your own time. I love Nashville. Personally, I think it's super fun. I may have been to one bar there, but that's not what you guys are there for. And so just setting that expectation as you're kind of getting into the beginning of the school year.